Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're zooming in on the broad, honestly pretty complex landscape of business ethics, before we really narrow our focus onto the fascinating, character-driven mechanics of virtue ethics. If you've ever wondered how the most successful leaders navigate those tricky moral gray areas, well, you're absolutely in the right place. We're going to explore what makes a decision fundamentally right or wrong, and how different ethical frameworks shape the modern corporate world. Let's jump right in.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap. We'll start with the business ethics landscape, look at the 5 principles of ethics, examine the utilitarian contrast, move into defining virtue ethics, and finally, wrap up with virtue in the workplace.
Section 1. The business ethics landscape. Let's set the stage by looking at the broad foundations of corporate morality. So here's a massive question. How do leaders choose right from wrong when the bottom line is at stake? It's a huge tension, right? Every single day in the boardroom, executives face decisions where intense economic pressures clash directly with moral choices. Imagine having to choose between using cheaper, unethically sourced materials that guarantee a massive quarterly bonus, or taking a severe hit to profit margins just to ensure fair labor practices. It's almost never black and white. It's this constant, super delicate, and honestly stressful balancing act between generating profit and upholding principle. To navigate that immense tension, we rely on business ethics. Simply put, this is the application of general ethical principles to the actions and decisions of businesses. It serves as a true moral compass for an organization. And what's really vital to grasp here is that business ethics aren't some special separate set of rules that magically only apply when you're wearing a suit or sitting in an office. No, the foundational idea is that if dishonesty, theft, or exploitation is wrong in your everyday personal life, it's equally wrong in business. This compass guides everyday corporate actions, keeping a company's drive for revenue firmly aligned with society's baseline moral standards. Section 2. 5 Principles of Ethics. Let's open up the specific toolkit of principles leaders use to navigate those tricky dilemmas. Let's move to and see how this builds. There are 5 distinct categories to consider: utilitarianism, rights, fairness, the common good, and virtue. Just to briefly break these down, the rights approach protects fundamental individual liberties, things like privacy or truth. Fairness focuses heavily on equality, making sure decisions are impartial and don't play favorites. The common good approach is all about compassion and prioritizing what society needs as a collective whole, like a clean environment or public safety. We're going to focus heavily on utilitarianism and virtue in just a minute, but these 5 really represent the core foundational toolkit a leader can draw upon when a tough decision crosses their desk. And this brilliantly illustrates the actual flow of decision-making. Notice how the initial context, or facts, the stakeholders involved, and the decision-makers themselves all funnel down into generating alternate actions. From there, you evaluate the potential impacts of those actions, maybe negotiate between differing viewpoints, and finally pick the optimal choice. This process takes those abstract ethical philosophies we just talked about and shows exactly where they plug into the concrete operational workflow of an organization. It proves that ethics isn't just theory, it's an actionable, step-by-step corporate process. We can break that workflow down into 4 practical stepping stones. Step 1. List the details. You've got to gather the hard facts, not just rely on gut intuition or momentary emotion. Step 2. Present every alternative. A leader must be fully open and truthful about all available options, even the ones that seem morally questionable at first glance. Step 3. Group choices based on implication. This is where you deeply evaluate the repercussions, who benefits, and who gets hurt. And finally, Step 4. Consider all options and decide. This is the critical moment. This is exactly where you apply those 5 ethical frameworks we mentioned, like fairness, the common good, or virtue, to filter out the noise and choose the most morally sound, defensible course of action. Section 3, the utilitarian contrast. To truly understand virtue ethics, we need to create a little narrative friction by looking at its primary philosophical opponent. Enter the utilitarian approach. This principle evaluates actions and strategic plans strictly based on their final consequences or outcomes. When using this approach, a leader is quite literally calculating utility. The ultimate goal is to produce the greatest benefit or the greatest good for the absolute most people, while simultaneously causing the least amount of harm. It's a very mathematical way of viewing morality. It's entirely focused on maximizing the collective societal good through a metaphorical balance sheet, weighing the positive outcomes directly against the negative ones. If the positives outweigh the negatives, the action is deemed ethical.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the stark juxtaposition between these two dominant philosophies. On one side, you've got the utilitarian approach. It's inherently calculating, focusing entirely on external consequences, outcomes, and calculating the greatest good. But on the other side, the virtue approach completely flips the script. It looks inward. It focuses on internal character traits, personal qualities, and the fundamental development of human morality. The contrast is literally night and day. You're looking at external mathematical outcomes versus internal human character.
Section 4. Defining virtue ethics. Let's zoom in completely now and unpack the core mechanics of our main topic. So, the crucial point is that virtue ethics focuses on the purposeful development of human morality, rather than calculating specific outcomes or consequences. If you're using this framework to lead your business, you essentially just throw out the utilitarian math. You aren't asking, will this decision make 51% of our shareholders happy? Instead, you're looking deeply inward and asking yourself, is this fundamentally the right thing to do based on our core human values? It's a profound shift in how a leader approaches a complex problem. By prioritizing personal character over immediate, tangible consequences, a leader commits to doing what's right simply because it's right, regardless of whether it looks good on a quarterly earnings report. This approach relies heavily on basic principles and character traits such as honesty, integrity, empathy, courage, and compassion. This brings corporate ethics down to a deeply personal, deeply human level. These aren't just empty corporate buzzwords plastered on a break room wall, right? These personal qualities act as the true drivers of decision-making. Think about it. It takes immense, real-world courage to make a financially difficult choice simply because it's the honest thing to do. It takes profound empathy to prioritize employee well-being during an economic downturn. Virtue ethics demands that leaders don't just act out these traits occasionally, but actually cultivate them purposefully over a lifetime. Section 5. Virtue in the workplace. How do these personal, internal virtues actually manifest in a high-stakes corporate environment? Let's take a look. Well, leaders using virtue ethics must be highly conscious of how their personal choices affect the culture and values of their entire company. Virtue isn't just a quiet, personal exercise that happens behind closed office doors. An executive's integrity, their honesty, their empathy, these traits ripple outward through the entire corporate structure. They set the tone from the top down. When a leader consistently relies on their moral character to make tough calls, rather than just chasing the easiest or most profitable outcome, it literally defines the operational culture of the entire organization. Employees watch, they learn, and they emulate. A virtuous leader organically builds a virtuous company. Which brings us to our final thought. Think about your own professional life and the challenges you navigate. Are your most difficult workplace decisions driven by calculated outcomes, or are they driven by your internal virtues? It's a deeply challenging question, but understanding these distinct frameworks gives you the power to consciously choose your path. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and take some time today to evaluate your own moral compass.